The door opens, and inside, it's not a home. It's a warehouse. Hermes boxes stacked like bricks. 72 suitcases, not packed for a getaway, but stuffed with millions in cold, hard cash. When the police entered this Kuala Lumpur apartment in May 2018, they thought they were investigating a crime. Instead, they found a collection: 12,000 pieces of jewelry, 567 luxury handbags, 14 tiaras, nearly 1.1 billion ringgit in luxury goods. That's over $250 million US. And it all belonged to one woman, Rosmah Mansor. But that wasn't the real shock. The real shock was that we had seen this before. Decades earlier, in another Southeast Asian palace, the same door had been opened. And what was inside changed the world's definition of greed forever. 3,000 pairs of shoes. The closets of Imelda Marcos. Different country, different decade, same DNA. Today, we aren't just looking at a scandal. We're looking at a pattern. The story of two women who didn't just want to be first ladies. They wanted to be queens. And this is where it gets dangerous. Rosmah Mansor wasn't born into power. She was the daughter of school teachers. She was bright, driven, and corporate bred. But when she married Najib Razak, the son of a political dynasty, she entered a world where she was an outsider. In the rigid hierarchy of the Malaysian elite, respect isn't always given, it's bought. She didn't just want to be accepted by the old guard. She wanted to overwhelm them. Because in the world of the highborn, an outsider isn't just ignored. They are reminded of their place. For Rosmah, every diamond and every designer thread was a counterattack. But there was a ghost in the room. Because Rosmah wasn't the architect of this strategy. She was the successor. Decades before Rosmah ever stepped into a boutique in New York, Imelda Marcos was perfecting the art of the performance. Imelda's hunger came from a place of deep, childhood humiliation. She was a member of a famous family, but her branch was the poor one. She spent part of her childhood living in a garage, watching her wealthy cousins from the outside. When she married Ferdinand Marcos, she didn't just want to be comfortable. She wanted to be untouchable. She famously said, "I have to dress up, so the poor will have a star to look at." This is the first rule of the pattern. Excess isn't greed. It's a message. It tells the public, I am so far above you that your rules no longer apply to me. Whether it was Imelda buying the Crown Building in Manhattan, or Rosmah establishing the First Lady of Malaysia office, a government division created just for her, the goal was the same. Create a title that doesn't exist, to exercise power that shouldn't be yours. For these women, shopping wasn't a hobby. It was a deployment of power. In the 1970s, Imelda Marcos was known to spend $3 million in a single day in New York. She once famously ordered a private jet to make a mid-air U-turn over the Atlantic because she realized she had forgotten to buy Italian cheese in Rome. She bought Michelangelo paintings for $3.5 million, like they were postcards. The world coined a word for it, Imeldific. 40 years later, Rosmah Mansor was keeping the pace. While the Malaysian public was debating a new 6% GST tax, Rosmah was reportedly spending $130,000 at a Chanel store in Honolulu in a single trip. She spent millions on anti-aging treatments and $30,000 on a single home visit hairdo. But the crown jewel of her collection wasn't a dress. It was the Birkin, a bag so exclusive that billionaires have to wait years for one. Rosmah had 272 of them. At that point, it wasn't fashion anymore. It was power. She didn't just buy them for the fashion. She bought them to show that she was the only person in the country who could ignore the waiting list. But the real question was, how did they pay for it? Behind every extraordinary fortune, there is a middleman. In the Philippines, Imelda had her cronies, men who were granted monopolies over the nation's sugar and coconut industries. In Malaysia, Rosmah had a young, ambitious financier named Joe Low. Joe Low was the bridge, the man who turned a sovereign wealth fund, 1MDB, into a private shopping account. He didn't just move money, He moved status. He was the one who allegedly facilitated the $27 million pink diamond for Rosmah. He was the one who ensured the orange Hermes boxes kept arriving at the pavilion residences. The pattern is identical. The husband provides the legal protection. The middleman provides the untraceable cash. The wife provides the image. It was a perfect circle. But this wasn't just about money anymore, because behind the jewelry and the handbags, there was a shift in power that the public was never supposed to see. The money wasn't just being spent, it was being weaponized. It was a silent coup, funded by the very people it was meant to serve. In every power couple, there is always one question: who is really in charge? For years in Malaysia, people whispered about Rosmah's influence. They spoke of her strong personality and Najib's apparent inability to say no. And then, the country heard something it was never supposed to hear. In 2020, the MACC released a leaked phone recording. "Can I advise you something?" The voice was sharp, commanding. It wasn't a wife suggesting to a husband. It was a CEO berating a middle manager. She told the Prime Minister of Malaysia that he needed to take charge. It was the steel butterfly, all over again. That was the nickname given to Imelda Marcos because she wrapped a ruthless political resolve in a layer of charm and silk. She was the one who reportedly pushed Ferdinand to declare martial law. She was the one who stayed in the palace, even when the revolution was at the gates. And in Rosmah's case, the rumors went even deeper. Whispers of shamans, witch doctors, and black magic. Her one-time confidants and even her own daughter spoke of bomos, brought in to provide a supernatural shield over the family. One whistleblower claimed Rosmah spent thousands on rituals to cast spells on anyone who stood in her way. Whether you believe in the unseen or not, the message was clear. She was the one in the driver's seat, but every engine eventually runs out of fuel. In February 1986, the Marcos era ended in a frantic midnight flight via US helicopters. They left behind the gold, they left behind the cash, and they left behind those 3,000 pairs of shoes. That image became the global symbol of kleptocracy. 32 years later, history repeated itself in Malaysia. The revolution didn't happen with tanks. It happened at the ballot box. A 60-year dynasty was toppled in a single night. And then, the raid. Police didn't find shoes. They found handbags. But the message was identical. When the public saw those boxes being loaded into trucks, the armor of luxury became something else. At that point, it wasn't luxury anymore. It was evidence. 12,000 pieces of jewelry, 2,200 rings, 1,400 necklaces, 14 tiaras. They didn't hide the crime. They documented it. The hunger that started in a garage in the Philippines and a schoolteacher's home in Malaysia had grown into a global financial disaster. They had spent so long inside the bubble of power that they had forgotten that people were watching. They thought the collection made them untouchable. In reality, it was just a trail of breadcrumbs leading the police straight to their door. Today, the shoes of Imelda Marcos are rotting in a museum in Marikina. The humidity and termites are doing what the courts couldn't, destroying the collection piece by piece. In Malaysia, Rosmah Mansor's handbags are sitting in dark, climate-controlled police vaults. They are no longer symbols of status. They are exhibits. Because at a certain point, a collection stops being wealth. It becomes a monument to insecurity. Imelda and Rosmah didn't just want things. They wanted to fill a hole that power alone couldn't fix. But as they would both learn, no matter how many Birkins you own or how many diamonds you wear, the door always eventually opens. And if you think that kind of wealth disappears when the scandal ends, it doesn't. It just moves into cities built specifically to hide it. There is a city in Malaysia that was supposed to be a $100 billion paradise. Now, it's a ghost town, being reshaped into a 0% tax vault for the global elite. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the story of Forest City is coming next.